Evening, maybe good morning to some, good day everyone. So today we have come to another inaugural lecture, the 11th, and so today's day belongs to Professor Gayathri Ranathunga, and whom to introduce her, no better person. So may I kindly invite Professor Virajini Karmara to introduce our today's professor in the 11th inaugural lecture. Over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Vice Chancellor, Sir, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Deans of Faculties, Heads of Departments, Senior Professors, Directors, distinguished guests, and my dear colleagues. I feel privileged and honored to deliver an introduction for the inaugural lecture about the very artistic-hearted and aesthetic loving, loyal friend I met in my academic life. Fashion displays of styles, seasons, and events. Style becomes the unique selling point of the human fashion industry today. The role of style does not only help consumers to decide on fashion, but it leads the consumer to a good taste of life. Authenticity does matter in style. History and culture are significant in authenticating a style. Designers created conceptual designs that enable expressing the socio-cultural context. They studied, followed actual historical dress details, and transferred historical inspirations to modern technology and pattern cutting to an expensive object. I hope all of us have connected virtually and are present physically today would get this message endorsed by the speaker today, Professor Gayathri Ranathunga, Professor in Fashion Design in Department of Textile and Apparel Engineering. Our speaker today is going to deliver an inaugural lecture titled Dress in Culture, the Local Context. In her lecture, she will focus more on how the socio-cultural context of the object is required to understand. Conceptual designs are based on characteristics that explains the socio-cultural context of the dress creates. Professor Gayathri graduated from the University of California in the year 2003 with a second-class upper honors bachelor's degree in fine arts. She was awarded a PhD in integrated design from the University of Morocco in year 2012. Prior to obtaining the PhD, she completed a postgraduate certificate in learning and teaching in arts and design communication from the Center for Learning and Teaching in Arts and Design from the University of Arts London, UK in 2006. She studied Mahamaya Girls College, Kandy, and she was recognized as a nationally and internationally awarded winning artist too. Her research interests span across wide areas of fashion, fashion theory, culture, tradition and fashion, history of fashion, sustainable fashion and eye practices, fashion consumerism, fashion culture, tradition and modernity, creative industries, and textile education of Sri Lanka. So far, she has published 43 research papers and presented research papers at 33 international conferences. She authored and published 2 scholarly books and co-authored 1 textbook. Her research has been appreciated in the form of Research Excellence Awards at the University of Morocco since 2016. Her noteworthy national contribution projects of introducing fashion design as a subject for the national curriculum under the concept of the 13-year guaranteed education program of the Ministry of Education, and introducing maternity wear for the government school teachers project of the Ministry of Education in 2018, and the designing the textile gallery at the Technology Museum at Polonnaruwa in 2019 by the invitation of the Presidential Secretariat and the Ministry of Cultural Affairs were well appreciated and highlighted by the government of Sri Lanka. I vouch that She could have contributed more to regional projects as well. Today, Professor Gayathri will profess about dress, fashion, and culture. She will hold theories with undue regard for everyday experience of the dress. Dress and dressing are experienced by every human every day in their life. Professor Gayatri is bold enough to say that although what things appear to me actually be tiny details of historical embroidery can make a dramatic change in the current fashion world, and now how conceptual designs are based on the characteristics that explains the socio-cultural context of the dress created. Now she is ready to face the world. The podium is ready to my dear scholarly friend.
Good evening to you. Dear Professor Gayathri, thank you very much for being here for me today. Your time, support, and cooperation I value a lot. Thank you very much once again. Now, let me introduce the topic of my speech today. Today, I would like to share some thoughts on dressing culture, the local context with you. My perception of dress and fashion is that a new creation would not simply become a fashion unless it conforms to some underlying theories. Which are expected to be brought to light through my research. New and creation such qualities are fashion. New means for the first time, not existing before. Creation means the action or process of bringing something new. As a whole, fashion means it is a new experience, the real quality of fashion. Fashion, essentially a dynamic human activity, earns its survival by influencing others. Therefore, influence is key in fashion. Influence is defined in the Oxford Dictionary as the effect a person or thing has on another. Further, it says it is moral activity or power. Socio-cultural, political, economic, religious, and psychological factors affect influence fashion. Simply, influence happens by combining all these factors all together. However, I have divided them according to available political and cultural data to study each pattern of process clearly. What is culture? Culture is one of the factors which influence fashion. Culture is, in the words of Tyler, the anthropologist, culture taken in its wide ethnographic sense, which includes knowledge, belief, art, moral, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. Fashion communicates culture. There are so many cultures are popular: travel culture, celebrity culture, community culture, historical culture, European culture, Indian culture. Such array of cultures are evident. I have been reading about cultural studies in fashion for 18 years. I have developed some theories on dress in the context of Sri Lanka, I would say local context, where the following parameters are significant: culture and influence, material culture, cultural sustainability. I have selected 4 research papers and their summaries to discuss the above parameters. These 4 papers were based on the Kandyan Kingdom of Sri Lanka from 13th century 18 to 1815. This study setting, the Kandyan Kingdom, shows how socio-cultural, political, economical, religious, and psychological factors influence clothing. In the Canadian Kingdom, all influence processes were over. During the Canadian Kingdom, South Indian, Western, Portuguese, Dutch, British, and Far East, such as Siamese foreign influences, entered the kingdom. As a result, the Canadian dress showed a hybrid formation of Western, Sinhalese, traditional sartorial features. The fashion resembled neither foreign nor local. Western and Eastern dress components were mixed. Sewing techniques and clothing arranging methods were mixed. The dress became an amazing blend of Eastern and Western dress items. They combined different foreign dress items and made their own. Ample of evidence is available. Provide reliable evidence. That is important in historical studies. Nevertheless, Canadian culture is still alive in Sri Lankan society. Therefore, Canadian fashion has a living culture. Therefore, Ralph Peary says, when he stating the Canadian social organization, it is not the race that matters but culture. Canadian culture was so strong that no deviation from it was possible. My studies focused on developing probable theories of influence, basic theories of influence. Theories of influence in dress derived from the Canadian Kingdom of Sri Lanka. I have given here 7 such theories: classical conditioning learning, observational learning, trial and error learning, semiotic aspect, cognitive dissonance, perception, and task orientation. This is the first theoretical paper I would like to share with you. The paper discusses psychological factors that influence fashion. The paper title is The Influence of Observational Learning on Fashion, the Case of the Canadian Kingdom of Sri Lanka, which was published in 2018. Kings of the Canadian Kingdom were influenced by Western dresses. Various Western dress items and patterns, silhouettes, accessories, materials, and methodology of wearing were introduced. Royalties showed immense interest in Western dress habits. The royalties had connection with foreign diplomats who were more skillful and showed financial strength, administrative skills, naval experiences, and military strength, then made them superior to natives and hence attractive at that time. Foreigners were always more trustworthy people to the king during the political crisis. Moreover, Western culture was highly admired by royalty. There is evidence. King Vimaladharma Surya, the first, and Queen Dona Catherine were educated and protected by the Portuguese. King Rajasingha II could read, write, and speak in Portuguese and Latin. King Rajasingha II addressed the King of Portugal as Lord in his letters. Prince Vijayapala, according to his original documents preserved at Lisbon, he says, "Though I am a Cingala by blood, I am a Portuguese in my ways and my affection." Once he wrote to the King of Portugal remarking that, "With the instruction of my Portuguese mentor, I learned very good customs and etiquettes and some special habits which royal person employed." They lived in Western culture. More evidence shows that the royalty yearned to copy Western social etiquettes. Therefore, it can be suggested that live or symbolic models influenced the Canadian king. Though this theory was derived from Canadian setting of society, it resembles a basic theory of observational learning developed by the psychologist Bandura. Observational learning experiment by Bandura says that it's a simple experiment. If a rat is allowed to observe another rat pressing a lever to get a reward, and then it is put into a situation where it can press the lever itself, it will learn very much more quickly than a native rat. Psychologist Bandura explains that a person learns by observing another person. Modeling or observational learning is proved to be a very important element in learning of human being. According to Bandura, if this observational learning process should be succeed, some important element need to be completed. Another person's behavior must be paid attention to, must be remembered. The observer must perceive that they can reproduce the model. The observer must be motivated to reproduce the model. To make this learning most effective, the model should be an eminent and significant one. The person who tends to observe another behavior should have an important quality of intelligence. Memory and intelligence are important features of a human learning. If this dress can be coupled with reliability, there is a possibility of influencing fashion. Reliability comes as wealth, beauty, power, and such factors. Then those can be coupled with the dress. Reliability comes as beauty, wealth, power, caste, skills, such factors. Then if we couple that reliable factor with the dress, there is a probability of forcing an influence. These reliable people then became fashion icons. Reliability stands positively in this influencing process. Even though the social and economic factors of Candian era were different from those today, theory deriving structure is always valid for any period. Observational learning is based on one's learning ability. Intelligence is developed through education according to system of measuring intelligence called Gaussian curve. It is described that intelligence behaves in the community according to the Gaussian curve. According to the Gaussian curve, the average of intelligence of the people in the community is 95%. Memory is defined in the Oxford Dictionary as the faculty by which things are recalled to or kept in the mind. Even though the social and economic factors of the Candian era were different from those today, the biological factors would not change. These constant biological factors are common in both the past and the present. In that case, it can be assumed that how far Candian theories will affect through these common factors. Now, I would like to talk about another theoretical paper. The paper title is Consumer Perception of the Ancient System of Gift Giving, the Headgear of the King Rajasingha II, Candian Kingdom of Sri Lanka, which was published in 2019. This is a historical study to find out the influence of foreign gifts in changing the king's perception of royal dress. The investigator tends to investigate the ways that people impose meaning on the object in their lives. Many subjects came with complex structure of meaning always in them. Assume that consumption is the meaningful use people make of the objects that are associated with them. King received gifts from foreign diplomats. King Rajasingha II writes a letter of thanking to the Dutch for the gift that he received. The 4 plums are very good, and as such, I welcome them. Plums mean his flamboyant headgear. Further, he writes that whatever the things my Hollander present me with, I esteem it very much. Moreover, he says that I well understand that they are sure to present me with only very precious things. It is possible to suggest that socio-cultural, political, and economical pressures gradually push the king towards a Western fashion fanatic. I saw a direct correlation between political factors and gifts to make a force. A humble gift mentioned in historical accounts point to the fact that the gifts were given to obtain something in return. Here I read a similar well-established theory to understand the influence pattern in the context of Sri Lanka. The French anthropologist Marcel Mauss, during the European Middle Age, gift exchange was the obligation to give, to receive, and reciprocate. Reciprocity, the practice of exchanging things with others for mutual benefits, especially privileges granted by one country or organization to another. In social psychology, reciprocity is a social norm of responding to a positive action with another positive action, rewarding kind actions. In the ancient system, gifts were made out of expensive and rare materials, often combined in a technically challenging and aesthetically complex fashion, insofar as material and status mutually confirm each other. Social, educational, religious, and cultural factors influence the king on gifts as well. Headgears with feathers were in vogue during 16th century in Europe. He always reflected the zeitgeist. Rajasingha II, because Rajasingha II, the sole objective was the exclusion of the Portuguese, willing to pay a heavy price for the Dutch monopoly of the spice trade of the island in return for aid against the Portuguese. Gifts were used as political weapons to make and unmake alliances to forgive diplomatic ties to signal dominance. The practice of exchanging things with others continued for mutual benefits, especially for privileges. Therefore, consuming the given gifts can be considered as a meaningful action. At that point, the gift acts as a metaphor. The king acted on his creativity out of clear motives and based on his understanding of his royal responsibilities. It is possible to suggest that Western fashion influenced dress was a sign of political, economic, and social stability of Canadian kings in their kingdom. As well, the gifts was a signifier of the traditional Sinhalese king's perception of fashion. I understood the difference between traditional society and consumer society. I understood how customs, rules, and norms get changed according to concurrent socio-political factors. This is the third research paper I would like to share with you. The paper highlights how cultural factors influence fashion. Material culture analysis of the shirt of King Kirtisri Rajasingha of Sri Lanka. Here, the material culture analysis is recognized as a methodology for costume study. The research was carried out to read the historical costume as material culture, using existing parameters of material culture analysis which were developed by the former researchers. A long-sleeved collar shirt of King Kirtisri Rajasingha, preserved at the National Museum of Kandy, has been selected for this research. The research is centered on the socio-cultural context which affected changes in dress, wearing, and making of it. The methodology of object analysis involves 3 stages, namely, the first one is description, recording the internal evidence of the object itself, to deduction, interpreting the interaction between the object and the perceiver, to speculation, framing hypotheses and questions which lead out from the object to external evidence for testing and resolutions. Material culture is to be studied through artifacts of beliefs, values, ideas, attitude and assumptions of a specific community or a society at any given period. To study a historical object, the most promising mode of classification is by function. We should let objects speak for themselves and not to be drawn into following methods and set plans. The shirt raised the following questions. What is this pattern? To identify the pattern, historical evolution of the shirt was important. What communicates the shirt? The shirt as socio-cultural phenomenon of an elite ideology. What materials were used? 17th and 18th century textile trade was discussed. How it is produced? Weaving, cutting, sewing points were discussed. The shirt has been discussed on the socio-cultural aspect, methodology of production, and wearing of the dress to make close suggestions of time and action of the dress. Probable suggestions could be made as follows. The shirt shows direct relation with political configuration of the time. The dress played an ideal uniform of authenticity of sovereignty. The shirt has a Western dress silhouette. It shows a close similarity with concurrent European shirts by materials, texture, line, color, form, and silhouette, such as design elements of 17th and 18th century shirts. The former kings, who were baptized and educated under the Portuguese priest, introduced Western dress fashion to the royalty. King Gayathri Rajasingha's dress elements are the same as Western shirt. He might have followed the previous king's sartorial etiquettes. The king's body physics can be suggested from the Dambulla sculpture of him and can be relatively discussed with temple murals where the king is depicted. The king had a well-built body. The shirt length is 27 inches and width of 25 inches, which is suitable for a well-built body. The actual dress material is soft, white, pure cotton, mixed fabric, which draped well. Several such materials were in trade during late 17th and early 18th centuries via the Dutch East India Company. The dress was hand-stitched, definitely before the sewing machine was introduced in 1850. The relevant king reigned in the kingdom of Kandy between 1747 and 1782 AD. Further, the research requires laboratory tests for material analysis of the shirt, whereby things can be accurately proven with scientific evidences. I understood the importance of material culture analysis in fashion education. Further, this is the most interesting research area to me, and I have understood fashion education as a matter of culture. I have published 4 research papers on the subject. What I want to raise from these research papers are material culture analysis as a methodology for costume study, research design, research procedure, and research sources. Supportive research areas of material culture analysis in the dress, relatively to European Asian material culture analysis of fashion and clothing. I understood the possibilities and limitation to study museum objects in Sri Lanka. This is the last research paper I would like to share with you. The paper discusses cultural sustainability. The paper title is Sustainable Textile in the Past, Wisdom of the Past. Inherited weaving techniques are the pillars of sustainability in the handloom textile sector of Sri Lanka, which was published in 2022. The objective of the paper is to identify characteristics of the driving force of the domestic handloom textile industry of Sri Lanka. This research paper focuses on inherited handloom textile knowledge in Sri Lanka. The significance of the research is concluded in several aspects. the basic definition and concept of cultural sustainability and its behavioral patterns are discussed in the context of Sri Lanka. Research findings are significant to the stakeholders of the handloom industry, research and policy making. The socio-cultural structure is analyzed. The Sri Lankan handloom textile industry then and now has been analyzed to understand the continuous narration of the industry since time immemorial. Recorded 9 weaving structures that are used in Sri Lankan handloom textiles today with the historical development, weaving structures, technical drawing and color. Characteristics which are identical to the Sri Lankan local context are forwarded. Cultures suggest an intellectual property economy in sustainable development. Sustainability objectives are based on economy, community, social values, and culture. It is obvious that sustainability has been a lifestyle in traditional society. Sustainability and culture are thoroughly linked together. The evolution of traditional culture is bound with norms, beliefs, and values. Therefore, traditional societies must imitate to advance. The achievement of sustainability goals depend on local economics, social and cultural values, and a change in attitude. Indigenous knowledge is based on caretaking. Buddhism, inheritance, knowledge, custom, folklore, norms, values, traditional education, modern education, traditional institutions, and today's government institution. All structures, all facilitate sustainable survival of the handloom weaving structure. Past and present are tied with one knot, which is the system of traditional learning. Traditional customs, norms, and values are based on Buddhist culture. Most common design and motifs resemble the philosophy of Buddhism, and they are represented in cultural practices of Buddhist religion in lifestyle, which is evident in art and craft. The most common designs in handloom textile products are the lotus flower and swan. The lotus signifies purity in Buddhist culture. The swan is a symbol of the good, merit, and bad. These textile motifs have been continued since ancient time to the present day, emphasizing the cultural link between the past and present. The value system seems to be path dependent. Therefore, the belief system are so robust and enduring, it is impossible that traditional value system will lose its power. Inherited craft knowledge is preserved by artisans. The artisans are reluctant to expose their skills, tools, and knowledge for public usage. The inherited textile knowledge is considered a treasure and the ancient wisdom of their ancestors. However, they use maximum capacity to compete in the national competition to produce the most identical traditional handloom products. The artisans identify the demanding value of inheritance knowledge. They caretake of the knowledge takes care of them. This attitudinal caretaking is seen in Dumbara Rata weaving techniques, which is known as indigenous weaving technique. This is a living culture in the concept of art and living. Designs, colors, weaving structures are recorded in folklore, which gives Sri Lankan cultural identity. Dumbara Rata weaving structures were originally woven in black, ash, and white. According to folk stories, the pattern has a history which goes back to the dates of Queen of 5th century BC, a warrior queen of the country. According to the legendary story, she owned a cotton farm in the Dumbara in the central hills of the country. When she was expelled by Prince Vijay later on, she cursed and then burned the field of her cotton farm. The ashes rose high in the sky and blanketed the land with patterns. Patterns are white, ash, and black. Rata weaving pattern has taken inspiration from ancient patterns and colors and continues since then. Beliefs, customs, and norms became a lifestyle, and it is the intellectual property of handloom weavers today. They learn from their ancestors. The knowledge has been passed down from generation to generation. This is cultural sustainability. Artisans are persuaded to learn weaving techniques, design, motifs, and colors from their education system. It is seen that there has been a consistency in forwarding design applications since ancient times. The same traditional design and motifs have been used since ancient times. In the 1970s, a variety of weaving techniques and machines were introduced in India. This collection of weaving techniques provided ample opportunities to produce various products with traditional design and motifs. The products range has been increased. The knowledge of weaving structures survived through the constant practice of artisans. They are systematically involved in constant learning. Inherited knowledge was passed down from ancestor to new generation from learning and practicing. In ancient times, their art and craft were modified and evolved through education gained from inheritance. Artisans who were involved in learning art and crafts were involved in the occupation as well. Traditional social organization protected both art and artisan. Today, the same learning pattern can be seen in the industry. The artist is accommodated in a structured institute where the artisan requires constant learning as foreign training, seminars, and workshops. Traditional handloom textiles were influenced by multifaceted Indian machines such as Dobi, Jacquard, Jamdani, such machines. The learning introduced them a new technology, foreign trends, tools, techniques, and materials such infrastructure. Learning gives insight and ability to artisan to adapt to today. This shows how inherited knowledge developed through hybrid culture and is facilitated with different cultural values. Traditional craft knowledge has been modified by current technology. Therefore, I remember a well-known quote, tradition changes, it is not stagnant. As in Japan and Thailand, identified learning and training are the proactive tools in protecting the heritage. Human resources are craft artisans who are employees in the industry. Technology will only be a facilitator. The human touch of a product is unique. Identity and authenticity are the most demanding selling point in both high-end and mass market. The research findings suggest the concept of an ideology of use rather than materialistic answer in analyzing sustainable textile as a creative process. Identified characteristics are interlinked with inherited craft knowledge, Buddhist culture, and network of people who live and work in particular industrial society. The industries develop through hands-on experience and prolonged engagement where human resources are the key factor. The research found that the system of learning which has been continued from ancient time today is the direct enforcer of the cultural sustainability of the industry. The research suggests recognition of consistent infrastructure supply chain as a national policy. The paper recommends to policymakers to the factors found to connect culture with an active action plan. My understanding of dress as a cultural object is cultural experience is transcendent and identical to each culture. A transcendental experience, the event, object, or idea is extremely special and unusual and cannot be understood in ordinary ways such as transcendental vision of the nature of God. The vision of God has been developed through the accumulated wisdom of the past. The vision of God has been experienced, learned through culture, and practiced through tradition since time immemorial. That experience is exotic. That is the point. That is indeed the real notion of the local context. Now, let me talk about my inspiration. Let me now note on my note on style. I try to understand the culture by observing our cultural life. I read not particularly about the dress most of the time, but folk stories, Jataka stories, traditional proverbs, similes, metaphors, idioms, original sources, and observing temple paintings, which give me the utmost pleasure and leisure to think about the subject. I have published 3 books, including one collaborative research project. I try to understand the basics of the subject. I have improved my understanding of traditional idea of beauty, taste such aesthetics relative to other cultures where ample scholars' perception on the subject has been a beacon light to my journey. I train myself to see the culture without bias. I must remark on such inspiration, Doom King, how Professor Gayathri penetrated historical evidences to reveal the truth of the real King Sri Vikrama Rajasinghe, persuaded me to be a biasless academic on cultural matters. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to my parents, my family, and friends for their love and support. I would like to thank all the teachers from primary education to secondary education who led me to be a thoughtful person. Let me pay my sincere gratitude to all professors, senior lecturers, lecturers of the Fine Arts Department of the University of Kalani, where I was open to the world of aesthetics and have been shaped to an academic. Finally, I would like to pay my utmost gratitude to Vidyadhyoti, Professor Emeritus Nimaldi Silva, who shed the light to beacon my wisdom. Thank you very much. I am Gayathri Madhumari Ranathunga.
Thank you very much, Professor Gayathri Ratnayaka, for the 11th inaugural lecture. Now I would like to invite Professor Nalin Wickramanachchi, the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, to give away the token of appreciation.
Sure.
And Professor Gayathri Ratnayaka, this invitation is to you to accept this token of appreciation. Professor Gayathri Ranathunga, I would like to invite you to accept this token of appreciation.
Thank you very much, Professor Gayathri Ranathunga, for taking us through that voyage of discussion of royalty throughout the history. So I'm sure there's a little memento here to remember this day in the honor of the voyage.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And before winding up this session, I would like to mention our sponsors. Virtues of the event sponsor, Daily Financial Times, the print media sponsor, and the Sri Lankan Scientist, the social media sponsor. Thank you very much for joining us today. Have a good day.